It's a showdown between a pack of coyotes and this 1-year-old German Shepherd Lab mix that's getting a lot of attention online. The group surrounds the stray dog. Several lunge at the pup and continue to intimidate him for all of 45 minutes. All the while, the lab is able to retreat. At times, he appears submissive and calmly fends off the wild animals without injury. Melissa Shatinsky captured the amazing encounter on her Ring camera outside of her Brea home in Orange County.
And it's almost as if he knew how to protect himself and fight them off and kind of back himself into a corner against that little area there where the dogs were kind of facing him, and one would kept going around, but he was able to fight them all off unbelievably.
The dog ended up taking off into Brea Canyon. Shatinsky says she spotted the timid animal again, but couldn't seem to corral him. Eventually, the dog gained enough recognition online, and someone was able to trap him and bring him into Orange County Animal Care, where he earned the name Duke and is officially up for adoption. It's hard to say for sure, but Animal Control says what you're seeing here could be a fight over the same food source, or the animals protecting shared territory.
It's normal to see them hunt in packs, but you also might see a one-off coyote who maybe wandered away from the pack. You'll also see a mother with her pups sometimes, and for sure you do not want to get in between a mom and her pups.
The attack is renewing concern among pet owners and parents with young children like the Asfar family.
Actually, I don't walk with him by myself anymore. Yeah. Now I'm always with somebody.
Animal control officers advise residents not to leave pets unattended, particularly overnight.
Good morning. Rise and freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. It's Friday, baby. Duke.
Hey, long weekend.
Hey, Stephanie. How you doing?
Oh, still getting over a cold ever since we were in D.C. Whatever is in the swamp water in D.C. is very toxic, I must tell you.
We're glad that we have you here. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning.
I do want to comment on this video, though,
I know you do.
Second.
That's why I played it for you. But before you comment, just real quick, let me just set it up for everybody. Welcome. And we're going to talk about getting rid of the copper penny today. We're gonna,
no.
We're going to talk about, the
what
penny.
Am I going to grab for?
The penny is dead. Starting next year, they stop printing them. Minting them. And so now stores have the choice to round up or round down. What do you think they're going to do?
Round down.
No.
What? Oh, round up. Yes, round up.
Yeah, they're going to round up.
Right, exactly. I was thinking for their own expenses, they're going to round down. But yes, round up. Yeah.
No, they're going to round up. And we'll talk about that this morning. Also, sad story. 2 Jewish people murdered outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., both peace activists.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, we'll discuss that. Justin's going to be on the show today. We haven't had him in a while.
Hooray! We haven't had a lot of us in a while because last week you were in L.A., so we didn't even have a show last week.
Yeah, it's been very busy at the Peterson household this spring. And there's a lot to look forward to. We were talking about this morning, all the events we got coming up. The Battle of Athens, less than a month away.
Yep, June, 18, 19, 20.
19, 20, 21.
19, 20, 21.
And we've got weddings, we've got float trips.
We've got family coming to visit. Hazel's first birthday in July.
Turning 1. We're very busy. And I know that you guys are. And Will Run Riot is in the chat. Will is now an official part of the crew.
I know. He's going to be making food for people.
Yeah. We were just like, why would we do like pizza and Subway sandwiches when we could have an actual food truck there and a supporter of the Wake Up America show? So
I know, and he's making all different stuff. Like I heard BB for Liberty saying he can make like Italian food. I think he might make Asian food. He's got all sorts of different types, which is really impressive.
Exactly. I just hope that I have a chance to be able to enjoy it because I'm going to be kind of like going crazy the whole time. I got a lot to do.
You eat fast.
Yeah.
I have faith.
Producing and directing, so it's a big job, but we're looking forward to it. So we're going to talk about that. Justin will be on the show with us today, and I found just a fun story because on Fridays we like to goof around a little bit. 11 things that millennials secretly resent about how they were raised. And from Your Tango, and this is one of those sites that they post stories like this, I think just to get people angry.
Oh, of course.
Just to get people mad.
That's like a BuzzFeed type of thing.
Yeah, it's an engagement bait kind of thing where it's like, you're going to read it and you're going to be like, I don't think that's how I was raised. Because what it sounds like to me is, and this is what a lot of people who are on the internet writing articles, it sounds to me like someone who has mental health problems and trauma. And
we've seen those people on YouTube where they're like, how to separate from a toxic family. And then they end up just talking about their own personal issues with their toxic family.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, we can't relate to this because we don't exactly have your situation here.
Right. Like everybody has like family trauma, family drama.
Right.
But not everybody, like it makes it their whole personality.
Right. And that girl's glasses, I mean, I'm sure they chose that photo strategically. Her glasses mean she is a lefty.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Those classics and the fake blonde hair.
Yeah.
That hair is not blonde. I'll pull up the picture later when we're talking about it. But yeah, 11 things millennials secretly resent about how they were
She
raised.
looks single. I'm just going to say that. Like she's very bitter. She has not gotten a man.
She's not had a man.
She thinks she's very deserving of a man.
She's had a lot of men. Let's just say she's had a lot of men, but she hasn't.
Yeah.
She hasn't
no man wants to lock her down. I'm sorry.
Had a lot of men, but she hasn't had. She's had a lot of men, but she hasn't had a man.
Or true gentleman. That's right.
A supreme gentleman, they might say.
Yes.
I give it a shit to hanging out with us. Haven't seen him in a while, as well as BB for Liberty, Richard Bell, Mr. Embry, and Pork Chop 159, Kermode, Southcott, Injam, Cecilia. The gang's all here.
I know all these people. Cecilia has really been helping us out lately, even for the documentary. So thank you to Cecilia. And she's been writing some wonderful reviews about our products at forlibertyshop.com.
So helpful.
Yes.
Makes a big difference. Like, you take 2 minutes out of your day after you buy a product at For Liberty Shop. You take 2 minutes out of your day when you get the email saying, can you leave us a review? To just write a little bit, maybe take a picture of the product.
And she always takes pictures, beautiful photos. So thank you, Cecilia.
Because people, when they visit a website, especially like a merch website, they always are like, ooh, are they trying to steal my money or whatever? Because there's a lot of scams out there, a lot of scam websites and things. They'll take your money. And
my mom fell for a scam recently. She bought some mascara from some Bulgarian company and it never showed up.
Right. So when people read the reviews that they have on their products, they're like, oh, that is, and you can tell they're written by real people. And some of them are really creative and funny. So thank you to Cecilia and to everyone who supports us.
And Joni also just posted her Gulf of America beach towel.
I know, that was awesome.
She's using it as a wall decoration.
It's a good looking one too.
A tapestry.
Yeah, for sure. Which, the big one especially is good for something like that. So thank you to everyone who have been financial contributors. We do have bonus content for them today, Stephanie. So do you know how the bonus content program works, Steph? Could you explain it to the audience? Yeah.
So we have to raise $75 in order to view the bonus content. And so you can do that in different ways. You can go to, which we're talking about, forlibertyshop.com and make a purchase. And if we have purchases that get to $75, then we'll get there. You can leave a Rumble rant so that we can add up to 75, or you can go to wakeupAmericashow.com/support and you can leave a donation there as well.
Mighty Megatron requested this shirt yesterday, Boar Lives Matter, which I thought was pretty funny, but he hasn't bought it yet. Now would be a good time to buy it, Megatron. Because all of the purchases that are made during the show count towards the $75 bonus content. So.
And could you also show my new Rosie the Riveter stained glass?
Yeah, I'll show you.
That I just made.
Yeah, tell us about it.
I love Rosie the Riveter, and I really want to bring more Liberty female faces to forlibertyshop.com because I know we have a lot of man Liberty figures. But we got to bring more of that female energy because we got a lot of libertarian women in this movement.
Yeah, we do.
I just love Rosie the Riveter, and I love my glass cutting board that I have of George Washington. So this is actually made of the exact same material.
Oh my goodness,
I cut on it every single day. It is amazing, so easy to clean. I cut chicken, I cut vegetables. There's me opening up the stained glass cutting board on Christmas when Austin gifted me the George Washington one.
They do make a great gift. Like,
Yes.
especially if you've got like a lady in your life like who is, maybe conservative or right wing, and they just like, or maybe not. I think Rosie the Riveter is universal. but
Yes,
if they're
and
more
it's just
patriotic-
beautiful. I mean,
is,
you don't
yeah.
even have to cut on it if you don't want to. You can just use it as a decoration in your house.
Yep. So if you guys want to support the shop and unlock the bonus content, go to forlibertyshop.com today during the show and make a generous purchase. The Summer of Freedom collection, also very popular right now. So we've got that. We've got Justin on the show today. We've got some fun topics, some funny topics. We're going to own the libs. We're going to say goodbye to the copper penny.
Can I say something about the
You wanted to say something about
dog video?
Duke, the dog that protected himself from the pack of coyotes. Go ahead, Stephanie.
So first of all, I had a Chow Chow German Shepherd named Duke for 16 years. My one of my childhood dogs, so very special to me. Second of all, the reason why I was making such weird faces is because I thought the woman who was being interviewed was the owner of this dog, and she had captured it on camera. And I was like, why did you not go outside and try to shoo away the coyotes?
Well, first of all, she probably didn't want to get bit by potentially a
Right.
rabid coyote. And, she's a woman. So, I mean,
I know.
women aren't the type to typically run out into a pack of coyotes.
I mean, I think that would maybe be the only way you would see me actually shoot a gun, is if there were coyotes trying to kill George or Calvin.
Oh, okay.
That would probably be the one way that you would see me become very violent very quickly. Yeah. But we do have coyotes in this area. We hear them howling.
Oh, yeah. We've got coyotes. I mean, they're just howling. They're like laughing. They're
like
weird
hyenas.
noises that they make. Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying. That poor dog. I mean, I feel so bad for that
5
dog.
coyotes. I mean, a lot of other dogs would have absolutely gone down.
I think the size of the dog probably really helped. If it was a little poodle, it would have been done for.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's a lot taller than those coyotes there. But as we see in the animal kingdom, it doesn't necessarily have to do with your size. Because we see animals go down in the, in Africa
It's not the size
when you
of the
don't
dog.
expect it.
It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog.
Right. And I know coyotes do go for people too.
Oh,
They
they-
go for horses as well. I remember in Michigan there was a story of horses that were eaten by coyotes. So terrible. What should we do? Should we just kill all the coyotes?
It depends. I mean, I don't think they're an endangered species.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not saying kill all of the coyotes, but yeah, keep them out. If they come into urban areas, absolutely, you gotta kill them. I would say, but I mean, I'm not a conservationist. Wonder what your thoughts are. You know what? They can send us a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. It used to kind of be the prevailing attitude, like towards animals, that you would just have a cull. There would be a culling. And, a lot of species became endangered that way.
Right.
I wonder what our audience thinks. Again, the text line that you can see in the bottom of the screen, 573-319-1586 is the text line, and you can text us anytime. Sometimes people are like, hey, Austin, Steffi, where's my Gulf of America shirt or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
And you can send us a text there. It's a great way to be in touch with us. We get texts over the weekend, and we get funny texts. We get suggestions for topics of the show. You can send anything you like, again, to that phone line that you see at the bottom of your screen, 573-319-1586. Again, 573-319-1586. The death knell for the penny, the Treasury has announced 1-cent coins are expected to stop entering circulation early next year. Businesses will need to round prices up, or they will need to round the prices down. The U.S. government stops putting new pennies into circulation. The U.S. lost more than $85 million last year making pennies. Steffi, your reaction?
Well, I don't want to stereotype, but I do like picking up pennies. I'm just saying.
What's the stereotype exactly here?
That Jewish people, the way to get a Jewish person to win a race is to put a penny at the end of the race. I've been hearing that one since I was a child.
Anti-Semitism.
I know, and as our
is what-
segue to this next story, which is, very, not tasteful, I know, but I am Jewish, so
This is how you get people killed on the streets of
But this is what I've been hearing my whole life. So what joke are we now going to say about people like me?
Well, now it's like nickels. But here's the...
Right, that I chase the nickels. I chase the quarters, right?
But yes. But the funny thing is that like you really do like you get... I've seen you with the penny. You get excited. And
My
you,
mother
like,
does too.
Yeah. And
you see how my mother... We stop in the middle of traffic and we just start picking up pennies.
Yes,
Seriously.
Yes. And and you can get yourself killed.
I know, it's worth it.
It's sad. No, it's not. Because I've seen like dimes.
Yes.
And you don't get excited about dimes.
Well, there's something very beautiful about the penny. You know, I like rose gold, and it's the closest to rose gold that I can find. It's beautiful and shiny and colorful.
How many pennies did they make to lose 85 million? Oh, wait, that's the worker fees to make pennies and operating costs to make a million pennies worth $10,000. Trump makes sense. Yes, I agree. I think it's time
Makes
for the penny.
sense. C-E-N-T-S. Double entendre. Well, I guess that means our pennies might be worth money then, right? Let's just keep our pennies, save them.
Yes.
Make some penny merchandise at forlibertyshop.com to commemorate this.
I doubt anybody wants
collectible.
Libertarians don't want anything that has Abraham Lincoln on it. I can guarantee you that. But it looks as if Megatron, mighty Megatron, got his Boer Lives Matter shirt. There he goes.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you.
So that's now we've got $30 down, and all we have to do is hit $75 raised. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So $45 more raised by the end of the show. That will unlock today's bonus content, and it's really good. It's about Joe Rogan and how the left is doing everything they can to try and find a lefty Joe Rogan. It's going to be a really interesting morning mini documentary.
I really don't like Joe Rogan.
Yes.
I don't think he has very many brain cells. I'm not going to lie.
Well, he doesn't. And that's okay. Like but here's the thing. That's what people like. That's what people want.
That's not what I want. I want to listen to somebody who's smarter than me so I can learn something.
That's not what most people want, Stephanie. They want people mostly want to feel like they can relate. You know what I mean, to the person.
I know.
And like,
so they never grow. They just never learn anything new. Honey, it's just speaking to the choir.
Yeah. Most people are like that, honey.
I know.
That's just what it is.
It sucks.
It does, but you just got to accept it. You just have to accept it. That's how life is.
Yeah.
Right? You know, that's just
the
how
only
people
episode I really liked with Joe Rogan was when that British man came on. Daniel, what was his name? Daniel somebody?
Oh, of course. The Jewish guy. Oh, not the Jewish guy. Yeah,
the historian.
Douglas. You're talking about
Douglas. Yeah.
Doug Murray.
The one who went against Dave Smith.
Oh, yeah. You like Douglas Murray.
Yeah. He was actually smart.
Yeah, he is smart.
He knows his facts.
I know. That's why people hate him.
Well, don't hate the smart guy.
They do. They always do. And they always will.
You can get smart too if you watch smart people.
People always hate the nerds. People will always hate the nerds. It's just what it is.
Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah,
right?
well, there was a little bit of the Revenge of the Nerds, but there's kind of a backlash to the Revenge of the Nerds now these days, right? Now it's like, it's back to, the high school jock kind of thing.
Really? Because whenever I learn about kids in school nowadays, GPAs are not just 4.0 anymore. They go past 4.0. They're like 4.5.
Extra credit.
And back when I went to public school, private school and public school are very different. In private school, it's cool to get your assignments in. It's cool to get extra credit and get good grades. Public school, it was not
the
cool.
opposite, wasn't it?
But I think nowadays in public school, being that these GPAs are so high, I think it's cool to get good grades now, based on what I've heard from kids. So maybe there is a shift. I don't know. If you have children, is it cool to be smart?
I doubt it. I don't know if it ever will be. The U.S. Mint, which is the Treasury's in-house coin producer, projects an annual savings of $56 million in reduced material costs. The penny, though worth only a cent, costs nearly 4 cents to make, so 4 times the value. The Treasury said it expects savings to grow once it stops using some of the production facilities. The Mint will stop making pennies after it runs out of the blank templates that are used to make them. The final order of blanks was placed this month. Americans will still be able to use pennies in cash transactions after production stops. As pennies fade from circulation, businesses will have to adjust pricing. Non-cash transactions will continue to be priced at exact change. The Treasury said state and local governments should provide guidance to retailers so that sales taxes are properly collected. You know what I'm curious about? What about all the machines at Silver Dollar City where you press the penny? You know, what's going to happen to those?
Now it's going to be press the quarter or press the nickel.
No way.
Right? Wow, look at that. Think about the businesses. Again, all these businesses are going to fail.
All these businesses. Yeah.
I have so many of those collector pennies that I made from museums as a child.
I'm pretty sure though that like Marvel Cave at Silver Dollar City is still going to like have some kind of, it will still be in business.
I hope so. This is really sad.
Yeah.
Hazel is not going to know what an art piece
Yes.
on a penny would look like.
BB for Liberty says, I listened to Rogan for the conspiracies and the shit talk. If you want education, Steffi, I have a great morning show to recommend. Good point, Brown.
Oh, yes, thank you.
And he donated $5 and somebody else donated 10. Mind Art, good morning.
Oh, everybody's so nice. Thank you.
So we've raised 45
15 plus 30 is 45.
Yeah, 45. So we raised $45
Yes.
towards the $75 goal. We're kicking ass already. We're gonna
Kicking
get that. We're
ass,
gonna get that
taking
bonus content
names.
unlocked before Justin's here. That's gonna be great. Drew Van Drunkel is here with and says, "Good morning, brainworms. My kid just said it's cool to get grades at public school. Nice.
Good. Thank you for responding to that, actually. That's really good to know because I hope that Hazel wants to be smart. I know that she's going to be smart because she's from us.
We know
we
what we have to
value
do.
education.
If she's really smart, you know what the real smart is like pretend to be stupid. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of women that do that to like be underestimated.
Ooh.
So honestly, that is a wise strategy.
Kind of like playing dumb.
Play dumb.
Damsel in distress.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Oh no, it couldn't be me. Could you please just help me out, sir? And then you whack him on the head with the end of your shoe. He's like,
Right.
you're like bend over. He's like, oh my shoe just came untied. Would you please tie it for me? And then you get your hammer, pull your hammer out of your purse, and then whack him on the back of the head and take all his money. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And that's how you do it.
Yeah, because I remember when I was in like first grade, I remember this popular girl got mad at me for not giving her my homework answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember that was the thing back in the day is the
Kinda
cool
rude.
people wanted you to do their homework for them.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I
And
remember
if you
that.
didn't, then they would bully you and make you feel bad.
Did you have that happen to you?
Yeah, when I was in first grade.
I used to see for guys, it was a little different. Like there may have been like some of that happened to some of the guys,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, it was like the hot girls would like ask you to do the work.
Oh, of course.
And it would be like,
can you just
"Hey."
do this for me?
Right, and then, but it would be like they'd friend zone you.
Oh,
they'd be like, oh no, what? Just because you did my homework for me doesn't mean that I'm going to like make out with you or anything like that. I'm not gonna meet you at your locker between classes and be seen with you in public. I just want you to do my homework and shut up, nerd. You know what I'm saying?
Those are the girls that became OnlyFans models in the end. Yeah, hate to say it. I wonder how many girls in school with us became OnlyFans models.
Oh God, I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know because it's always the ones you don't want to see.
Exactly.
Congress sets the rules for currency production, including the size and composition of coins, and can discontinue or eliminate coins. But the Treasury said it has the power to halt the production of new coins. With production costs rising, the U.S. government lost more than $85 million last year on the roughly 3 billion pennies it produced. 3 billion pennies. Meanwhile, Americans throw away up to $68 million in coins a year. Can you imagine?
Just take them to Coinstar, you guys. I took all of our coins to Coinstar and I got an Amazon gift card. And you just throw them in the basket. What?
How much does Coinstar take? It's pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive.
It takes some. I mean, if you want to roll them up, time is money. I don't want to roll them in those little paper things.
Don't the banks make you do that if you like cash them in?
They make you put them in the rolls.
Yes. Which why doesn't the bank just have the same kind of machine like a Coinstar machine? Like they just don't want to mess with it.
It's so antiquated.
Yeah, it is.
So stupid.
Yeah. Some 60% of actively circulating coins, or as much as $14 billion, sit in coin jars, according to the Federal Reserve. Don't tell FDR that. He'll pass an executive order to just seize it all once the bills come due. But the penny remains deeply embedded in American culture. Traders buy and sell penny stocks.
Oh.
Grandparents.
That's from Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
Penny stocks.
Yeah. Grandparents advise that a penny saved is
a penny earned. What? All these things are going to be ruined.
Right. Friends are always eager to offer their
2 cents.
Exactly.
Oh my
Stephanie,
gosh.
yes.
Oh.
So the U.S. is actually doing this. They're kind of following the footsteps of Canada, if you can believe it.
No. Why?
They stopped producing the coin in 2012. They eventually started rounding cash transactions to the nearest 5 cents. Australia and New Zealand stopped producing 1-cent pieces decades ago. So the U.S. penny was one of the first coins made by the mint after it was established in 1792.
Oh my goodness.
So
like Thomas Jefferson was paying with pennies.
Yeah. At the time, the design featured a woman with windswept hair.
Ooh.
The penny has since shrunk in size. It used to be bigger. And its composition has changed from pure copper to a mix of zinc and copper. In 1909, Abraham Lincoln was first featured on the coin in honor of his 100th birthday, according to the mint. So goodbye to the penny, and I say good riddance. I don't like pennies.
Okay.
I'm not a penny lover.
Okay. To each his own, you know.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. You can send us a text at 573-319-1586. That's the text line, 573-319-1586. Listeners are over in the chat as well. Says Coinstar, if you choose a gift card, it does not take a cut. Okay,
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's probably why, because I chose Amazon gift card.
Thank you, Cecilia.
Thank you. So see, I did it so long ago. Basically what I do is we have this like coin jar, and so I let it fill, and then I take all the coins much later. So usually it's a few years.
Penny saved is now worthless, says BB for Liberty. Very funny. Nelson says they have the machine at the bank. Oh, you have a bank around here?
Yeah.
What is that? What's that like?
We don't do local.
We don't have local banks. We probably need to at some point, but when you move and you think to move, it's just a pain in the butt. But yes. Pennies, I wonder if that means that the pennies that are currently in circulation, will this mean that their value will go up, or I guess does it go to zero because they're no longer transferable for like legal tender?
We can still pay with them. They said. We can go to the store and pay with them.
You could, right? And then eventually they get brought out of circulation entirely.
But you can still use them.
Sure, but eventually, how would you use them? It's like
there'd be no purpose.
There would kind of be no purpose. So here's the thing.
It'd be like saying if the dollar bill went away, there'd be no purpose. Well, I mean, if something is like 5 cents, you can always use a penny to make 5 cents. So it'll always be needed.
Right, but what if you only have 4 pennies?
Well, then you're screwed.
You don't need a fifth
Then you
penny.
pay with a credit card.
Yeah, like everybody else does.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what about people who are coin collectors? How does that impact? Let's say they have like rare pennies. This would like drive up the cost of the value of their pennies, you would think, right?
Right.
Because
I don't want to make any predictions about collectibles because I have a lot of Beanie Babies that are in storage currently, and I thought they would be valuable, but they're not. So I really have no idea what value pennies will have. I'm not an expert.
As you go forward with what you have seen, can you give us any sense, because you said you looked the shooter in the eyes, can you give us any sense of what you saw in him as he was sort of getting help and people were tending to him as if he too was a victim of seeing this?
Yeah, to be clear, I heard about that part because we were in the secure room when he initially walked in. I just saw him screaming and then being handcuffed. But what I saw in his eyes, I mean, I went to Columbia for grad school and I saw the same thing in his eyes as I saw in the eyes of all the protesters at Columbia. Nothing different between him and them. But
they did not create this horrific shooting. They did not, they didn't shoot.
They gave permission. They gave the permission. And they've called for this. They have called for Intifada revolution, which is the same thing he yelled last night.
Do you worry that there will be a conflation, though, of the two, those people who are speaking their mind, who really care about what is happening in Gaza, and those people who are like this person who did this horrific shooting, who intend to do harm?
A conflation. I mean, they are calling for Intifada. At Columbia University, they call for Intifada constantly. They're not quietly, they're loud. They're loud. You can hear it. They make recordings of themselves. So what's the difference?
Are you afraid?
Yes.
What will
We're
you do
all
about
afraid.
that?
Everyone should be afraid.
What are you doing to try to make yourself feel safer?
Why can't you just go on and live your life? I'm a New Yorker. I remember 9/11. You can't let them make you be afraid. You have to go on. You have to live your life, and hopefully your government does things to protect you. Last night, our government failed us.
Jonathan Epstein, I know that they are going forward with this. There is expected to be charges in this case. We will see what happens, but I know you'll be watching.
You think there's going to be charges? Big charges in this case?
That lady asked the most stupid questions I've ever heard. Is that him?
Yep.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Free Palestine. Elias Rodriguez from the Party for Socialism and Liberation argued that the murder of Laquan McDonald and the Chicago bid for an Amazon headquarters are not two separate issues, but rather they are both connected.
Wait, what? What is this?
This is the Party of Socialism and Liberation.
Okay.
And this is on their website. So he was a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
He's a socialist. Okay.
Yeah. He's obviously, yeah.
Free Palestine!
This is him.
Free Palestine!
31-year-old Chicago man.
Wow, he was wearing a suit.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Allegedly shot and killed two young Israeli embassy staffers Wednesday night. He's an activist. He's vocally protested on behalf of pro-Palestinian issues in a range of progressive and anti-corporate causes. He once demonstrated with socialist groups outside of the mayor of Chicago's home against a new Amazon headquarters. Right, we don't want Amazon in our city. There's a lot of that.
Are they blaming the Jews for Amazon or something? Like
well,
what?
they blame the Jews for everything.
Right.
He was charged Thursday with murder and other federal crimes that carry the possibility of the death penalty.
Oh, yeah. I could see him getting that.
Yeah, he told police, I did it for Palestine. I did it for Gaza. This is, the people calling for a global intifada. Do you know what the intifada is, Stephanie?
No.
So the term intifada is an Arabic term for uprising or shaking off.
Like a revolution?
Yeah. And it refers to the Palestinian resistant movements against what they call Israeli occupation. The intifada refers to two major Palestinian uprisings in 1987 to 1993. There was the first intifada. And that uprising was sparked by a fatal incident involving an Israeli military vehicle in Gaza. The first intifada drew global attention to the Palestinian cause and led to the Oslo Accords in 1993. The second intifada was from 2000 to 2005, and it was triggered by Ariel Sharon's visit to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. This uprising was more violent than the first, involving Palestinian suicide bombings, armed attacks, and Israeli military operations, including airstrikes and incursions. So the intifadas are rooted in the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which centers on their competing claims to land, self-determination, and security.
So what this guy did was intifada?
They're basically calling for violent global revolution.
Which is why they're hurting people all around
Islamic.
the world.
Yeah, so they're calling for acts of terrorism and violence to occur around the world. They want more of this. The Party for Socialism and Liberation, so a call for intifada is a call to violence. And that guy that you just heard talking, the one that was, that retarded woman on CNN was asking those questions.
Who was scripting her? Clearly herself. I mean, she was so bad.
It was.
What are you going to do to feel safe? What did you see in his eyes? Like,
right.
what kind of questions are this?
Right. Yeah. So, now, understanding the context of that, let's listen to that again one more time here.
As you go forward, with what you have seen, can you give us any sense, because you said you looked the shooter in the eyes, can you give us any sense of what you saw in him as he was sort of getting help and people were tending to him as if he too was a victim of seeing this?
Yeah, well, just to be clear, I heard about that part because we were in the secure room when he initially walked in. I just saw him screaming and then being handcuffed. But what I saw in his eyes, I went to Columbia for grad school, and I saw the same thing in his eyes as I saw in the eyes of all the protesters at Columbia. Nothing different between him and them.
But they did not create this horrific shooting. They did not, they didn't shoot.
They gave permission.
So
she's in denial.
Yeah, so she's talking about those Columbia protesters, right? The ones that shout the same thing, free Palestine. globalize the Intifada, right? And she's like, but they didn't create this stuff. It's kind of like, there's this term, it's called stochastic terrorism, right? Where you basically are calling for violence to occur. Like you're encouraging acts of terrorism.
Like the leftists were doing for Trump.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
They're like, he's Hitler.
Yeah. Calling for him to be murdered.
Right.
Right. And then somebody tries to murder him. Right.
Oh, gosh, what a surprise. Did those people cause that? Did they have a part in it? Well,
I think the answer is yes. Yeah, I think that they do. Right.
if you push somebody enough, they're eventually going to hurt somebody.
All right. Stochastic terrorism refers to the use of public rhetoric, media, or communication to inspire or incite random acts of violence by individuals or groups without directly coordinating or ordering the attacks. Right. It's kind of like when Maxine Waters, the congresswoman, was saying things like, you know, if you see some of these Republicans in public, you gather together and you get a crowd going. Right. In other words, like, let's whip up an angry mob to surround Republicans. And we saw that happen during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests. You would see, and many of them were white people, going out on the street and surrounding people on the street, telling them, say Black Lives Matter, doing that kind of shit, right? They're encouraging violence. It's what they call stochastic terrorism.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people in response to this shooting, they're saying, well, what about the Palestinian children? They're killed every day. And, this is just two people who are Jewish. You don't care about the kids, but yet you care so much about these people. They're comparing these two things together. It's like, these are apples and oranges here. Mm-hmm. It's not like we're just killing Palestinian children just because we want to.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not religious, but I'm not I'm not a left liberal or left socialist or Democrat or a communist, right? And my view when it comes to religion is that not all religions are the same, right? The church.
No, you've always thought that.
Yeah, the Church of Scientology is not the same thing as the Baptist Church, right? They don't have the same recruitment methods, they don't have the same retention techniques, and they also don't have the same history of violence. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between how people are treated when they leave the Islamic faith versus when you leave being a Baptist. No one tries to kill you,
right?
When you're a Baptist, right? And here's the thing. The central thesis of my argument is that if your religion or your culture is in alignment with American values, our Constitution, our religious liberty, our views of separation of church and state, if your faith or your culture or ethnicity, what have you, if it's compatible with American values, you can be an American, and you could immigrate to the United States if you will accept them. Or if you have a faith that's incompatible, your faith has to change.
Right. Well, like the Christian nationalists believe that everyone should be Christian in America.
Well, they have to go.
Yeah.
They have to be deported alongside the Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
They can't be here either, right? You either have to accept American values that allow for religious liberty, and if you don't, you can't stay, in my opinion. You're not an American. It's not an American value.
Right.
Right? The founding fathers were not Christian nationalists that said only you had to be Christian in order to be an American.
Right.
They specifically wrote letters to people of different faiths and said,
oh, yeah, they wrote a letter to the Jewish people, George Washington.
John Adams wrote in, I think it was the treaty that ended the Barbary Wars. Mm-hmm. I think the Treaty of Paris, he said specifically, as the United States is not founded specifically on one religion, then we have no reason to have conflict with the Mohammedan nations at the time, right? And so because Christianity and because Judaism are not in conflict with American values, largely, right? So are there sects that are in conflict with American values? Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
There's extremists in all areas.
But Islam largely has not accepted. Islam is the majority of Muslims who believe in the tenets of the Islamic faith are in conflict with American values. And therefore, I don't think they should come to the United States. I don't think that you should allow people into the United States who refuse to accept our values of religious liberty.
Right, right.
And I know a lot of people will disagree with the idea that there's a separation of church and state, but there is a separation of church and state in the United States. There is no official establishment of religion. We're not a Muslim nation. We're not a Christian nation. We're not a Jewish nation. We're not an atheist nation. We're not a secular nation. It's a nation where everybody whose values are in line with the United States can stay. Right? America is an idea, and that's how you become an American, because you accept American ideals. And so, I don't like Islam because it is incompatible with Western values, in my opinion. I don't think that. I think the problem is that Islam didn't have an enlightenment. I mean, Christianity and Judaism used to be much more violent than they are now, right? But they had been blunted by the Enlightenment. For example, we don't follow the Old Testament, the Torah.
We no longer sacrifice people.
We no longer sacrifice goats, right?
Right.
We know, it's not legal to burn a goat in the town center for, to Yahweh. And that's fine, right? And that's good, right? Because Christianity and Judaism have been blunted by the Enlightenment, and American values supersede the Old Testament. You can't stone a rebellious son, for example, like the old law,
No.
right? And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But Muslims don't accept that. They say that church and state are one. They demand a global caliphate, that the whole world submit on bended knees, and that's why there's war, and there should be. You have to war. You have to fight against that. It is unfortunate. I would rather live in a peaceful world, but I'd rather kill than be killed. Your reaction?
I would agree with that. Sorry, I'm trying to get my cough to go away.
Yeah.
But as a Jewish woman, I would say I'm definitely much more hyper vigilant now. Like, we were just at our park down the street just yesterday, and there were Jewish stars on the little kid play set, and I was like, "What is this? Like, why are people drawing Jewish stars on the play set?" And I was thinking, like, there's no Jews around here. And
yes.
I'm assuming, so just me, I assume it's just out of hate. People are drawing the Jewish stars because they don't like the Jewish people, but I really don't know. So I guess you could say that I'm definitely more aware of my surroundings and more scared of what could happen, for sure. I pretty much lay low as a Jewish person. And here in Missouri, or at least where we live, there's really not a Jewish population. So nobody
also,
really talks about Jewish stuff very often.
They don't, but people tend to be more positively influenced towards Jews.
Yeah, anybody I meet who is Christian, they're like, I love Jews.
Yeah.
And they're so interested in learning about Judaism.
Yeah, because Christianity is a Jewish religion. It stems from Jesus was a Jew, and like the Old Testament and everything is Jew, and even in the New Testament, it's Jews. But so Christians who are evangelical, especially the ones who are biblical, like really tied to the Word of God from the Bible, they tend to be very pro-Jew, and many of them are also Zionists, which of course is a bit of a different thing.
Right. And if you're a Jew, you're not necessarily a Zionist, because we've actually talked to Aya Katz before, and she is not a Zionist, but she is Jewish. So they're not one and the same.
They're not one and the same. It'll be interesting to hear what Justin has to say about it. I think he's over in the chat.
Oh, for sure. I definitely worry about Hazel. I mean, she, by Jewish law, is Jewish. It's not that you and I are very religious people, but just for that fact, if anybody knows that she's Jewish when she's in school, will she be picked on?
Probably.
I don't know what kind of world she's going to be.
In. It's a shame, though, that the fact of the matter is that she will be discriminated against by people like this. She will be in danger from people like this for no other reason other than her birth, the happenstance, the circumstances of her birth, right? She's not going to become, not that we know, that she's not going to become a practicing Jew, right? An Orthodox Jew or something like that. It's not like she's, it's highly unlikely that, being raised by libertarian parents, she's going to go out and, go work for the Israeli embassy or something like that. But, who knows?
She's going to learn about both faiths, and we're going to, read the Bible to her. And read the Old Testament documents to her.
Yeah, but that's mostly because I want her to be literate of the culture in which she's raised, and for her to be aware of her roots and to be able to have like a share, to understand in the language of the common shared heritage that she has with her family members, of course, and with the communities and the people in which she live, especially Christianity, because she's going to be dealing with Christians. If she lives in Missouri, she's going to be dealing with Christians, and she's going to have, difficult conversations when they say, "What church do you go to?" She's going to be like,
Well, I can't even say, like, how many times people around me will just start citing Bible verses, and they'll just be like, Corinthians, whatever, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But people assume in our modern day that the Bible verses. They just assume that it's common knowledge. So I can definitely see a benefit for reading the Bible for sure. So you can just be in the know, even if you don't believe necessarily.
Do you know any Bible verses at all, Stephanie?
Is thou shalt not kill in the Bible?
It is, yes.
Okay.
It's from
There you
that's
go.
from the 10 Commandments.
I know
yes.
the 10 Commandments, not all of them, but
yes. Hold on. This is I found a video of my cousin Stephanie. He became a preacher. This is my cousin at a very young age.
that's really
Here
your
it is.
cousin?
I see here it seems like these kids are just regurgitating Bible verses. I want to know if you really understand what it is that you are preaching.
I'd like to make up a reading comprehension test for these kids to see if they really.
You're not on mic. So
This student's an
I know,
A
could you
student
give
in
me-
the school.
Could you maybe give me a Bible verse?
Oh, that
and
doesn't mean
interpret it or something?
yeah, could you preach for us and then tell us what it is you mean?
Biblically. Both ways.
Could you, Duffy? Could you? In your own words.
But you want me
Yeah.
preaching it?
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
It's my cousin.
Well,
Are you kidding me?
There's a verse.
That's not your cousin.
Yes, it is.
Get up and preach.
Come on, preach.
Yeah, go ahead. Stand up right where you are if you want to. Go ahead.
Jeffy, do you want to preach?
If you want to. If you don't want
the
to,
audience shouldn't be able to intimidate you into this. If you want to do it, it's up to you.
Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed.
Now, what does that mean?
Okay. Now, wait a minute. Wait just a minute, please. People want to know what that means that you just said. In your own word, tell us, what does that mean?
It means just what it says.
It's the word of
Don't yell
the gospel.
it to us. Tell us what that means.
Well,
I've never read the Bible, let's pretend, and I don't understand that type of language. Tell me how that applies in my own life.
Well, why I'm screaming is the Bible definition of preaching is Isaiah 58:1. It says, "Cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet."
Stay away from the Bible, Duffy.
Tell us in your own words.
How do you stay away from the Bible if you're going to preach, though?
The Bible says you're to speak as the oracles of God. If you don't want to talk the way this Bible talks, you should keep your mouth shut.
Okay, yes.
I mean, there's no cliff notes for the Bible.
Yeah,
right?
there are. There's
You just got to
plenty.
take the words as they are.
I guess. I don't know.
You can't summarize, paraphrase.
Justin Peterson's coming up next. We unlocked that bonus content. Thank you guys for your generous donations. We appreciate
Thank you.
But don't stop. Go shop at forlibertyshop.com during the commercial break. And we'll see you guys on the other side. The Flippity Flip with JP on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Democrats just spent millions trying to reverse engineer a guy with a mic, a beard, and a can of liquid death. And somehow they're still losing. Because here's the thing, you can't fake Joe Rogan, you can't buy Cool, and you definitely can't slap together a party-approved podcast factory and expect people to listen just because it's aligned. This isn't a Joe Rogan problem. This is a reality problem, a credibility problem, a we forgot how to talk to normal people problem. So what's the solution according to the party of consultants and coastal media execs? Easy. Just throw millions of dollars at it. Build a think tank, fund a progressive content network, hire some guy named Tristan to run your TikTok strategy. Problem solved. Except it's not. Because people can smell fake from a mile away.
They know when the vibe is curated. They know when the words are pre-approved by a messaging team. They know when a relatable podcast host is actually just reading from a DC script with a friendlier tone and slightly more slang. That's what makes Rogan such a problem for them. He's not trying. He's not focused grouped. He's not polished. He just is, and people love him for it. He'll have on RFK Jr., Tulsi, Bernie, Elon, Jordan Peterson, whoever, and just talk. No interruptions. No MSNBC panel dissecting it in real time. No handlers. Just long-form conversations where people say real things and sometimes mess up. And that makes the consultants sweat through their Patagonia vests. Because for them, content isn't about conversation. It's about control. It's about protecting the narrative, defining the Overton window, making sure no one strays too far from the party line. But you can't compete with freedom of thought by throwing money at the problem. You can't manufacture real trust through a marketing campaign. What do they try instead? Hire digital strategists to pump out progressive talking points. Recruit creators to slip ideology into their skincare routines. Build out newsrooms and podcast studios and fund them with foundation money, all in the name of democratizing information. But really, it's about centralizing influence. They're not trying to empower creators. They're trying to clone them. Replace the messy, unpredictable voices with controlled, polished alternatives who never challenge power unless it's the approved kind. Meanwhile, guys like Rogan and creators like you and me and thousands of others across the liberty space, we don't need $10 million to speak freely. We don't need a memo to know what's true. We built audiences the old-fashioned way, by telling the truth, taking the hits, and showing up consistently. That's why they're failing. Because you can't mass-produce authenticity. You can't run liberty through a communications funnel. You can't build trust by reading a teleprompter with feelings. The irony? They had cultural dominance for decades. Hollywood, music, universities, mainstream news. They had it all. And now, a UFC commentator with a microphone is pulling more viewers than CNN in prime time. And it's driving them nuts. So what do? Blame misinformation, blame podcast algorithms, blame toxic masculinity, blame anyone and anything but their own inability to listen, to debate, to connect. Here's the truth. The real revolution didn't come from a movement. It came from a conversation. And people aren't giving that up just because the White House wants better influencers. So if you're tired of content that sounds like it was written by AI after being yelled at by a DEI coordinator, if you're tired of party-approved personalities reading from the script and calling it authenticity, then do something about it. Support the creators who aren't for sale. And you can do that right now by going to forlibertyshop.com. We're not backed by a foundation. We're not built by a comms team. We don't need a permission slip to say what we believe. What we are is proudly independent, loud, free, and just rebellious enough to put it on a t-shirt. So if you want to support liberty style and actual unscripted thinking, not the Spotify-friendly version of it, then grab your gear at forlibertyshop.com. From government-mocking t-shirts to Gulf of America towels, we have the best merch for freedom-loving patriots. That's forlibertyshop.com. Because freedom doesn't come from a grant proposal. And influence, that has to be earned. See you next time.
As you go forward with what you have seen, can you give us any sense, because you said you looked the shooter in the eyes, can you give us any sense of what you saw in him as he was sort of getting help and people were tending to him as if he too was a victim of seeing this?
Yeah, just to be clear, I heard about that part because we were in the secure room when he initially walked in. I just saw him screaming and then being handcuffed. But what I saw in his eyes, I went to Columbia for grad school, and I saw the same thing in his eyes as I saw in the eyes of all the protesters at Columbia. Nothing different between him and them.
But they did not create this horrific shooting. They did not, they didn't shoot.
They gave permission. They gave the permission. And they have called for this. They have called for Intifada revolution, which is the same thing he yelled last night.
Do you worry that there will be a conflation, though, of the two, those people who are speaking their mind, who really care about what is happening in Gaza, and those people who are like this person who did this horrific shooting, who intend to do harm.
A conflation. I mean, they are calling for intifada. At Columbia University, they call for intifada constantly. They're not quietly, they're loud. They're loud. You can hear it. They make recordings of themselves. So what's the difference?
Are you afraid?
Yes.
What will
We're
you do
all
about
afraid.
that?
Everyone should be afraid.
31-year-old Chicago man who allegedly...
It's me. You know, I tell you, every time I'm on the show, you always say my smoking hot. And I'm like, it's me. And it's her. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Thanks. You're welcome. Oh, boy. Good. Oh, well, you know, just getting back in the groove after DC. Had a great time down there with everybody. Really did have a good time. Weather was nice. We had a good turnout, fun group of people, and yeah, it was just overall, it was a real good time. I hope you all keep doing that, because I think Liberty Tourism could be a fun side gig. Yeah. Oh, it is. Well, that's right. In June, I'm going to go to the Bunker Hill reenactment, because this is the 250th year of the Battle of Bunker Hill.
Ooh, nice.
So that's,
what do we know about the Battle of Bunker Hill, Justin?
Well, there was a bunker and there was a hill, and that's all I know.
I guess you will tell us what you learned after you go to it.
Yes, I will. I think it'll probably be more what we saw down in D.C. at Mount Vernon.
Yeah.
Well, because we just had the Lexington commemoration, the battle of shots, the shot fired around the world.
That's right. Yeah. Nelson65 said, for Justin, and he donated $10. Thanks, Nelson.
Oh, boy. And I didn't even have to lap dance for it. I love that.
Although you would.
Although I would.
Absolutely.
Happily.
Nice to hear see Captain Tight Pants, Relaxian McGroin, Dad Bod Baboon, Mighty Megatron, and others over there in the chat as well, guys. Looking at photos from DC, I learned one major thing. Justin is an absolute giant. Yes, also very true. Justin, thanks for joining us here. It's a difficult topic, but one that you probably have a pretty strong opinion on. What's your reaction to the take of this pair of murders committed by this free Palestine activist?
Well, I mean, here's the deal. This was an absolute execution in the name of an ideology, and it wasn't resistance and it wasn't protest. It was terrorism. That was terrorism, because when you scare people for an ideological view, or you try to intimidate from an ideological perspective, that is by nature and by definition an act of terrorism. So you're not a revolutionary, you're a moral eunuch. You're a coward as far as I'm concerned. These people have sort of framed themselves as these revolutionary heroes, like Che Guevara, whatever his name is. They just think, oh, I'm a hero. I'm going to make everything better. They don't realize they're demons, man. I mean, they're effing demons. They're demons. Because, no one gets to murder for their cause. You don't get to kill people for your cause, period. Okay? I don't care what flag you fly. I don't care how victimized you feel. You don't get to go around shooting innocent people in the street and pretend you're some kind of freedom fighter. You're a thug. Yeah? You're a coward with a manifesto, And if your resistance involves gunning down diplomats outside a museum, then your ideology belongs in the same dumpster as every other authoritarian cult in history, period. Put you in the dumpster. Your ideas are worthless. You have nothing to say. And this is what happens when you worship, to me, it's what happens when you worship collectivism. He didn't see those people as human beings. He saw them as labels. He saw them as demographics, right? That's a demographic. I'm going to kill a demographic. That's the logical end point of identity politics. Once you reduce someone to a group, you give yourself moral permission to destroy them. So this is Marxism's bastard child, right? Rage without reason, revolution without conscience, and death in the name of some imagined utopia. Fuck him. I hope he dies in a fire.
Wow, that was epic.
Justin, how do we solve the crisis of the plight of the people in Gaza? I mean, what is the,
is it our job?
What?
I mean, we're involved.
is it even our job?
We're paying taxpayer dollars for it. I mean,
I know.
At the end of the day, we get an opinion because we're paying for it.
And it's affecting us here at home.
Yes.
They're hurting us as Americans.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, can Trump just take it and we'll make it a parking lot? Or no, what do you say? But casinos. We'll turn it into casinos. No, I really don't know. We're talking about a centuries-old conflict here. This is not just like, oh, you stepped on my kid's, toy in the backyard. This is literally an epic story of history that goes back centuries and centuries. So it's like, how do you solve this? It's almost an intractable problem. I don't know what to do, But I do know this. I do know in which country I can walk down the street and not be killed or thrown off a roof. So I know where my loyalties lie because I know which country would probably have my back, and it wouldn't be Gaza.
Justin, I consider myself to be a fairly tolerant person, but when I see the way that some of these communities are, they sort of circle the wagons and have the spears pointed out in places like Michigan, for example, where Muslim communities go and they don't integrate and they create, zones where you cannot travel unless you're wearing a hijab or a burqa in the United States. It makes me deeply uncomfortable with the idea of allowing unchecked immigration from Arab nations. It makes me think that maybe it's probably better for us to allow white South Africans and not Arab Muslims. Does that make me an intolerant, racist bigot?
Well, it makes you aware of patterns. Pattern recognition.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. This is the weakness. Now, I'm going to speak in a global context, but this is the weakness to me of liberalism, is that the toleration of just like, well, it's okay, just let them do what they want to do, and then you've allowed this into your midst. I'm all for people being able to practice whatever religion they want, do whatever they want. But there's an agreement in liberalism that says if you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone, and we're just going to get along just fine. But the problem is that totalitarians use that absolute weakness. That's the weakness of liberalism. You do you, I'll do me, we'll get along fine. That people are going to provocate. And like when gay people, in the LGBT movement, start their pride parades on the steps of churches, that's a provocation. That's a provocation, right? You're provocating people. You're goading them, like you said, Austin, you're goading them into a reaction. You're goading people into a reaction to push them to a place where they will react in a negative way. Mm-hmm. So when people don't, here's the thing: communists don't get to be in America. Period. I'm sorry. End of my rant. Their whole system of governance and belief system is not aligned with anything in liberal values. Period. They're not. They use liberalism as a skin suit to gain access to institutions and academic. Hello, down the street from Harvard. Hello, places with education, and they don't even believe in property rights. To me, that's a core tenet of American beliefs as well. You believe that people have the right to own property. Communists don't believe that. So how do you give rights to people who don't believe in your inherent rights as an American? I'm sorry, I'm being really intolerant here, but I'm kind of like fed up with it. I'm fed up with the communist BS. Like, you don't get to have rights in a society if you don't believe in our rights. Like, and you want to take people's rights away from them. I'm sorry. No,
but it's like the alternative to communism, we're told, is fascism, right? So that the other end of
guess
the authoritarian.
What? I'm also get them out. Get the fascists out.
Fascists out.
Where are the
too,
liberals?
Right?
Where are the classic liberals? Where are the people? Where's the liberal views, the libertarian views that the country was founded upon? Those are the ideals and values that we should all be sharing. And if you don't share those values, get the F out of our country. Period. Get the F out. Get the F out.
I can tell you guys are brothers.
I want the communists out.
Well, we both arrived at the same conclusion. It's a correct conclusion. But I mean, and here's the thing. This is kind of like the battle that I've raged, within the libertarian movement, which has mostly turned pacifist when it hasn't turned pro-terrorist in regards to foreign policy and these questions of cultural similarities and differences, is that there has to be, that liberalism needs muscle.
Yes, that's right.
That in order to defend liberalism or libertarianism, to defend a liberal nation, we have to have an institution that's quite illiberal, which is the United States military. We've got to be the best at killing people and breaking things in order to ensure that people from overseas can't come into our nation and kill people and break things. Right.
Well, yeah, because I'm not a moral relativist. Like you just said, Austin, I don't believe that all religions are the same, and I also don't believe that all cultures are the same. I'm not a cultural relativist. I believe that some cultures lead to more and greater flourishing of its people than others do. So I am tired of this idea of like this moral relativism, this cultural relativism that just says, oh, well, everybody's equal. We're all just great. We're all just swimming for everything we're doing. No, we're not. There are some evil cultures in this world, and they would gladly see themselves as, taking over completely. Theocracy, for example, in the Middle East. Women can't drive cars. I don't see any American women feminists talking about that. I never see them talking about the injustices of the Middle Eastern woman who cannot even go out into public dressed in regular clothes. Can't even be seen in public. You are literally wearing a burqa that you cannot even, your identity is completely destroyed as a woman. And I don't see any American feminists spitting, rage about that.
Amen, brother.
I'm sorry. I'm done. Gloves are off.
Steelbringer's over in the chat. He gifted a subscription to the chat. We appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
So in terms of the racial or ethnic makeup, see, for me, it's less about the racial ethnic makeup and more to do with the belief system or the values of the person who's coming. So for example, I would take 100 Cuban refugees who are coming to the United States fleeing communism who want to be capitalists, then I would have one white communist from France. Right?
Period.
You could be the whitest Swede or Norwegian, and if you want socialism in the United States, fuck off. I'd rather have the 100 Cubans. So for me, it is about ideas. It is about what brings us together as Americans, and there is this debate that's happening on the right now, where identity politics and identitarianism has come into vogue in right-wing circles. Right, many of them. Fascists, right, in the literal definition of the word, arguing that the majority white people will have these opinions, etc. Well, perhaps. However, it's more important to me what someone believes. They say that it's about blood and it's about soil. That America is not an idea. But yes, it is an idea, because if it wasn't an idea, then how could we have possibly strung together all of these cultures for 250 years in our history if it wasn't an idea? If the Jewish Americans who moved here and became Americans and built up Hollywood, for example, weren't Americans, if there wasn't an idea, then how did they become Americans? If the Irish, who came in and had a lower social status than the blacks, became Americans, then how could it not be an idea? America is an idea. It's a set of ideals, and it's centered around the ideals of liberalism or libertarianism or the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence. Those are ideals, and ideals can be held by any man. Some cultures and some ethnicities tend to hold it more than others, but again, communists, fascists, theocrats, Muslim terrorists, not welcome, not compatible with American civilization, and therefore unwelcome in my view.
I agree with you completely. It's like, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but it's like we need a second McCarthyism. It's like, get these people out. Get them out.
Boy, you really are trying to get the audience on your side today. That's the kind of thing people love. Go ahead.
I was just looking up if Ellis Island let through communists, and people who weren't just liberals. And it said Ellis Island was actually used as a detention center for illegal entrants and suspected communists.
Yes.
So that's really interesting. Yeah. I guess they didn't like communists either.
No, they didn't. And the question that they asked, I remember when we went to Ellis Island, and this was back when I was flirting with my anarcho-capitalist days. And the first question that they asked was, "Are you an anarchist?" And I kind of gulped. I was like, "Oh." That's kind of. But then I thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, they're not talking about like anarchists. They're talking about communists. They're talking about the people like Emma Goldman types who came to the United States and she would they called her Red Emma. She actually was. Remember when we went to the Missouri State Penitentiary here in Jefferson City?
She was in there.
Yeah, Emma Goldman was in there because she was a communist.
So they used the word anarchy to mean communism back in the day?
Yeah, communists frequently do refer to themselves as anarchists, right? And it's usually because the way that they think communism will be brought about is that they will destroy the government, they will destroy the institutions.
That's right.
And then when it's over, an anarchist state will emerge naturally in the ashes of the destruction of civilization. In
because
practice,
we saw that
it
with
never works
Chaz.
that way.
Remember when we saw Chaz? Remember when we saw Chaz?
Chaz.
Was that during the 2020 riots? They created that that sort of communist area that they roped off. I think this is in Oregon, Portland. This is in Portland. And what was the first thing that they did is they erected a border, which is just like the first thing that they did was put a border around their Chaz, so that we have a border and you can't come in here. And we have been too nice to communists for too long and allowed their views to encroach upon all of us.
Yeah.
Everything that we hate is communism. And that sounds reductive, but it's true. It's a newly created kind of communism.
It is, and it is committed to a permanent violent revolution here in the United States
forever.
Right? Yeah, and it's an international movement.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to say something?
Oh no, it was just my cough drop.
Okay, you clicked your tongue like you wanted to.
Yeah, no, it was my cough drop moving around. Sorry.
Gotcha. No problem.
It's like you're right though. It's like you get to come to the party and you can hang out with everyone else. But the minute you start being, it's like this is the whole paradox of intolerance or whatever, the Karl Popper. But it's like when someone's views in life or are antithetical to the operation of your society or the agreements of your society, they are an enemy of. And we talk about foreign enemies all the time. We never talk about domestic enemies. There are people in the country that are literally our enemies, our domestic enemies, and we don't talk about them very much enough. We should.
Yeah, completely agree. We absolutely need to be talking about this.
And they'll make him into a martyr. See, the left will make this guy into like the Luigi Part 2, right?
Right.
They'll turn him into Luigi Part 2, right? Luigi Mangione, right?
Absolutely. Because again, they keep comparing it to, well, if the kids can die in Gaza, then it's okay for Jewish people to die too.
Right. I mean, which is, again, it's whataboutism at its greatest. It's like these people don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Being angry at the world still doesn't give you a license to kill. Sorry, that's not radicalized. That's an entitled behavior. Don't you think? Mm-hmm. I'm so entitled that I actually have the power to take life. I'm gonna take life. That's how entitled I am. That's how narcissistic I am about how I feel about my beliefs. That I'm entitled to take your life. But what really goads me and really grabs my gongers is the mommy tone of that reporter. Did you notice how she reversed her tone and
terrible.
She turned into that hyper feminized, toxic mommy tone?
Yeah, she didn't like that there was too much outrage being expressed by the man in her presence.
No, she tried to therapize him. She tried to do therapy on him.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feel? Let's talk about your feelings.
Yeah, we don't want to conflate, conflate these people. Are you scared? Are you afraid?
Oh, listen. Yeah. Listen. I mean, that's just wow. I just was like, wow. We don't hate the media enough, there's more proof.
There are the communists, there are the socialists, there are the terrorists. And then there are the aiders and abettors, mostly liberal white females in Western nations. I'm reading a story this morning on Sky News. This is from the UK. Southport stabbing survivor launches campaign to end the use of traditional kitchen knives. Leanne Lucas. Yeah. Leanne Lucas.
Well,
she wants to
people.
Yeah.
Oh my God. People. What is it? Guns don't kill people. What is it? Do people don't kill guns? Kill. It's the same thing when the guy I was thinking about when he was with the car. Remember when during Christmas they had a Christmas fair in Germany and a Muslim drove into the Christmas fair.
Yes.
But they said a car drives into like the car just did it. Like the car just decided.
Now, if it was a self-driving car, I guess we could say so.
We just need to start saying AR-15 kills people in street, as if it's just like walking around with no one's operating.
That's the headline. AR-15 murders 10.
Yes, exactly.
A survivor of the Southport knife attack is calling for the use of blunt-tipped knives in home kitchen. In campaigns, she says, is for the girls. In one of her first television interviews, Leanne Lucas, 36, tells Sky News it was the, quote, tip of the knife that caused injuries that led to her, quote, nearly dying. She says, I never thought I'd be talking about things like this, but since it happened in July, I can't sit still and not say how I feel. The attacker used a kitchen knife purchased via Amazon. She says, I don't want this pain and trauma that any of us felt. I don't want it to happen to another family. So her solution to this, Justin, is to ban knives that have pointy tips, because she said the part of her that she was stabbed with was the pointy tip. Do you think that, that'll cut down on the stabbings from the migrants in the UK?
Absolutely, because the one thing you learn about when you're in prison is that people will turn sporks into weapons. So it's like, if people will find a way, you know what I mean? It's like they'll find a way to make something into a weapon. So it's like, oh my god.
But what? I mean, how stupid do you have to be?
Pretty damn near.
I mean, you have got to be like, she's not retarded. I mean, she doesn't have features that would indicate Down syndrome. And yet I've known plenty of Down syndrome sufferers who are smarter than this woman.
I'm just reading about the UK friendly knife. So it must be a folding, non-locking knife with a cutting edge of less than 3 inches.
So but here's the thing. She's trying to make it so that only blunt tipped knives will be used in home kitchens. So she's not even going after like violent criminals. She's not like raising awareness about violence in her country, probably because that could get you arrested for racism. But nonetheless, she's trying to get housewives to only buy blunt tipped knives.
How are we going to cut chicken and vegetables?
There you go. What about sushi, fish? Like, what are you going to do?
How are we going to use our George Washington cutting board in the UK? We cannot.
Okay, it's time for us to switch subjects. Who's ready to have some fun, to bitch and complain about how we were raised?
Yay!
Just kidding. Well, yes. So this is a story, and I'm going to do a quick little commercial read before we do it. But it's called 11 Things Millennials Secretly Resent About How They Were Raised. As much as they may not want to say it, millennials have a whole bunch of piled up resentments. I tend to be kind of like defensive of millennials because I am one. However, this millennial, whoever wrote this article, is so insufferable that I want you to just be prepared to agree and disagree with the person who wrote this article. Her name is Alexandra Blogier. And I just want you to be aware that the person who is in this photograph that I'm about to pull up on the screen.
Is that her?
If I can. That is not her.
Oh.
Right. So, but I don't know why the copy and paste is not working. There it is. No,
it was the wrong keyboard. We've got like 2 keyboards and 2 mouses.
We've got a million buttons and inputs right in front of us right here. So give me just 1 second here, because I want to pull it up for those to see on the monitor, the picture here, because the picture will set the tone. There we go. Okay. Yes. 11 things millennials secretly resent about how they're
Feedback in the chat that says you're muted.
Oh, me?
Well, we should be back now.
Is it me?
Somebody says Austin looks better when you can't hear him. Okay, that's my phone.
I think mine is going. Yeah, mine is good.
Sound. They're giving me a lot of feedback there.
They're having their meltdown. It's a meltdown out there.
Yeah, I see it. All right, I'll get it fixed after the show.
Can
guys,
they
but
hear me?
They can hear us fine now.
Oh.
It's that scene. That scene doesn't have an audio set to it, so they hear us now. Okay, so let's get to the story here. Justin, this will be a fun one. Okay, 11 things millennials secretly resent about how they were raised. Keep in mind, Dad's probably listening. Number one, the academic pressure placed on them. I think Stephanie will really relate. Millennials resent the intense academic pressure they felt when they were kids. It wasn't enough to make honor roll. Millennials were also expected to be varsity athletes. Sounds like Tiger Mom stuff. And star in the school play. They were raised to believe going to college was the only way to be successful. True. Which didn't exactly pan out the way millennials planned. The academic pressure millennials experienced didn't disappear when they entered the real world. 45% of millennials shared they're burned out at work. They carried all their school-related stress into their professional lives. Millennials have always been in the unique position to experience extreme burnout, the pressure to constantly prove themselves, achieve professional success, and compete in a globally connected world creates an environment conducive to burnout. I'm not going to lie, Justin, I actually kind of sympathize. Maybe nobody gives a shit about like your feelings or things like that, but I definitely know the feeling of burnout. I know you're Gen Xer, but like, I don't know. How do you feel about this one?
No, I mean, I think that's true. I think that I can see that a lot. What we've done, I think, is in some ways we've really denied kids the ability to like just be kids. You know, one thing I see, now this is obviously a different generation, but I see a lot of kids who are just so overbooked. They're just completely overbooked. Like they never get a time to just be kids and sit around and watch TV or like, you know, watch a movie or just not have anything to do. It's like if they don't do something at every moment of their life, it's like it's a waste of, you know, they're wasting their time. And I think that's a real pity because honestly, creativity comes from being bored. Having the opportunity to be a bored person allows you to really kind of have time to think and to discover things and go, oh, you know what, I never thought about that. Or I think people do need time for daily silence, you know. But I also agree with the idea about the college thing because too many people go to college anyway. And I think more people could go to trade schools. I'm always waving the flag of trade schools because I think trade schools are so important. And I think that that's another avenue for people to come into where they don't have to have a lot of debt, right? You're not going to be straddled with debt. I mean, think about like, you know, the average guy who goes to a trade school is going to come out and he's going to be able to make, you know, maybe good, it depends on what he does, but he's going to make a good salary coming out of there. And, you know, a person who comes out of a college degree with, I'm sorry to say, a gender studies degree is probably not going to be making very much money, even though they're up to their eyeballs in debt, right? They're going to be like, you know, $200,000 in debt for a degree that really isn't going to turn into anything. So at least with a trade school, you've got a wonderful opportunity to be, you know, active and to get into something right away because the market is there. Because why? Because it's not glamorous. It's not glamorous. So people don't go for the glamorous jobs. But sometimes those I read an HVAC guy once who was saying, he'll go into an office and he says, I make more money as an HVAC operator than anybody that works in this office. He's like, I make more money than the people that work in this office.
But you know what? Like, the sad thing is, he still can't get a date because women think he has a boring job.
That's right. That's completely right. But guess what? He has that he doesn't have that those women have debt. The woman becomes a financial liability when you're marrying her debt. It's like so. In some ways, he's got the power because financially, he's the one who's not strapped with debt. He gets to be making the choice to say, I'm not marrying you. I'm sorry, you have too much debt. I'm not taking on your debt.
Oh boy. Now me, in response to the whole burnout, I went to private school from 1st through 5th grade. And then I also went to, it was a public school, but it was an international baccalaureate high school. So I went to that from 9th to 11th grade. And I got so burnt out that I actually switched to a normal public school in 12th grade. And I want to say that I ended up taking a more easier path in terms of the college I went to. I went to a university and I got a social work master's degree, but I used to want to be a doctor. And so I think I was so burnt out from high school that I literally just kind of wanted an easier college path. I'm definitely not regretting the degree I got because it's allowing me to have the lifestyle I have now working from home. But I mean, I like college. I think I definitely will want Hazel to go to college, you know, if there is some sort of career that she wants that's not like a skilled trade. But I think college was good socially. Like I was able to have, you know, lots of friends, and you have an experience that you cannot get at trade school.
But I don't even know if college is like that so much anymore, right? It has changed since we went to
Right.
college, for sure.
Yeah, now I guess there's protesters, and you can't even have a peaceful lunch anymore.
You send her to college, she
Well,
comes
I
back
also
a
think
communist.
that the phone has made people antisocial.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because when you can entertain yourself, like we couldn't do that in the late '90s going to college, you know. And what you just said really was one of the reasons why after I graduated, I had about a good 1 or 2 years of severe depression after college, because socially everyone was gone. Like all my friends were gone. I couldn't go down the hall and like say, "Hey, let's hang out." I didn't realize how much just mental wellness I was getting out of those social connections, to just be able to pick up on a Friday or Saturday night and just literally walk down the hall and say, "What are you guys doing tonight?" It's like, "Oh, we're going to go and do X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "Yeah, let's go. Let's do it." You know?
Right.
You don't, when you adult out of college, you lose all of that. And that becomes really hard for people. The solitude of adulthood can be really difficult. But you're right. I mean, I think the social element is huge, but I just wonder, are kids able to be social? Because I don't see that in this modern culture. I see a lot of kids who won't even go into relationships. I was just reading an article in The Atlantic that was saying teenagers aren't even having boyfriends and girlfriends. They're just completely foregoing all of that. They're just not doing it at all. It's like, okay, well, how do you build, you know, emotional intelligence? How do you build, you know, repartee with other people? You don't, if all you do is be online all the time.
Good point.
That is true. And I mean, so far, Hazel seems to be pretty social. Whenever she's anywhere,
She doesn't even really
she's always
care about-
surrounded by other children.
You know, we thought was interesting, and we had this conversation last week, is that Hazel doesn't care about screens at
No.
all. Like,
Except her phone. She does want to touch her phone.
but she doesn't like really care about what's on the screen itself. She just
Yeah.
likes the phone to play with the device itself.
she
She's
likes lights that are bright.
Yeah, but I mean, she doesn't watch TV.
No,
She
I
does
turn
not-
on children's shows, and she does not care.
She doesn't watch them. She's way more interested in playing with us,
Mhm.
right? She'd rather like have a wrestle fight on the couch with her dad
Yeah.
than watch screens or TV. She doesn't care about any of that stuff. She doesn't care about children's television or programs or anything like that. So maybe that's a blessing. Let's move on. We only got a half an hour left in the Wake Up America show, guys. If you haven't clicked the like button, please do so already. And if today is your first time watching the Wake Up America show, click the follow button as well. Today's Freedom Family Friday, which means I bring my wife and my brother, Justin, my wife, Stephanie, my brother, Justin, and they're both here with me on the show today, live. Glad to have them. Today, right now, we're finishing up the show talking about 11 things that millennials secretly resent about how they were raised. Number 2, I'm sure Stephanie will have a strong opinion on this one. How their mental health struggles were minimized. Millennials secretly resent the way their mental health struggles were swept under the rug when they were kids. They're an undoubtedly anxious generation, but they were raised with the boomer belief that going to therapy meant that something was wrong with them. They didn't get the support they needed as kids, which means they still have a hard time regulating their emotions as adults. According to Deloitte's 2024 Mental Health Deep Dive, 35% of millennials said they feel anxious and stressed most of the time. 33% said that work is a key source of stress, but they still feel like mental health struggles are too stigmatized to openly discuss how they feel. Wow, I don't know if I believe that, but anybody, I'll open it up. Steph?
I was a very anxious kid from the beginning. I mean, I hated school. I never wanted to go to school. But the thing is, I don't know if my parents really knew about mental health. They didn't minimize my issues whatsoever. No. Instead, they like gave in to them. So I think that's actually what maybe made them worse unintentionally. Like they did not mean to do that. But like, for example, they helped shield me from the things I was afraid of. And I think in the end, that actually made it worse because really they should have pushed me to do things. Like, for example, if I was in dance class, like tap dance class, I remember I signed up for it and I got the tap shoes, but I ended up not going because I was too anxious to go. And my mom let me do that. Same with a science camp. I remember I was all signed up to go to a science camp. There were too many boys in the class. I didn't want to go. My mom let me get out of that camp. So it's like, I think my parents just didn't understand how to deal with anxiety. They didn't realize that they needed to give me that little push and that encouragement rather than just say, okay, you're scared of it. You don't have to do it. Because we just didn't know about mental health. I had no idea.
Well, yeah, because when you know with cognitive behavioral therapy
mind.
is that when you have a person who's afraid of something and you keep them, this is why I don't like safe spaces.
Yeah.
When you keep people from experiencing negative feelings, you don't teach them that the negative feelings don't last, right? The negative feelings then become the thing that they can't experience. Like, I can't have a negative feeling. I can't have a negative feeling. So when you prevent people from working through their negative feelings, you actually give them kind of a complex. You give them a complex of fear about something. You know, it's like me with roller coasters. To this day, I can't ride roller coasters. You know this, guys. You know it. I can't ride roller coasters. And it's because I've never really been able to manage that fear since I was a kid, because it was so terrifying. And it was so, I mean, I hate to say the word trauma because it's so overused, but it was, when you're 3 and 4 years old, it's kind of traumatic. It is traumatic, you know? And I just—
Were you on a roller coaster at age 3?
Yeah, because I was very tall for my age, because I'm a giant. So when I was like, 3 or 4, I mean, yeah, when I'm 3 or 4, I look like I'm 7, you know. So they put me on the roller coaster and they were like, let's go on the roller coaster. And of course, I'm just the most innocent, sweet little kid. And I'm just like, let's have fun. Yay. And then it's like, absolutely.
And of course, your parents had no idea that you would have been afraid of that. You know, like I'm sure they were just wanting you to have fun.
Well, I don't know. My parents are sadistic. Mom and dad were a little sadistic. They were a little sadistic.
I can see that in Austin, actually. Sometimes a little bit with Hazel. Because, like, he'll do things that I'm like, come on. You know that's going to, like, get a rise out of Hazel. You know Hazel's going to be a little scared of that. Come on.
Well, so, yeah. So
we were at a Long John Silver's in Kentucky, okay? We were at Long John Silver's in Kentucky. This is before Austin's born. I had on little overalls, and there was a giant fish hook on the ceiling of the Long John Silver's. Like, you catch fish with. It was hanging from the ceiling. Well, Dad, because he's hilarious, put me up on that hook by my little, overalls, and just hung me there for like forever. And I can remember it. And I'm like, just hanging there, crying, because I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like laughing at me. They're like, it's so hilarious that the baby is being hung up on a hook.
See, that is funny. That is absolutely.
See, I don't think that's funny. I would have made you get Hazel down.
That is absolutely the kind of thing I would do for laughs and take a selfie.
You've inherited your dad's nature.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. Hazel has this thing where, like, when we want to get the dogs to howl, we can, I taught the dogs to howl. So if I go, oh, then the dogs they'll go, and then they'll go, and then eventually George and Calvin will, and George's howl is like hilarious. It's like this. It's just the funniest thing ever. But for whatever reason, it upsets Hazel. And she does this thing, like, she'll start to cry, but like before she does, she'll like see me. Like when I start the howl, she'll like look at me and she kind of goes like this. She goes, and makes this face. Her lip just comes up and it starts to quiver. So now I do it every once in a while just to see her lip go.
And whenever you do it, I'm like, come on, Austin, you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I stop before she like starts like, wailing. But I mean, it is.
That's very dad.
Trauma. Suck my trauma. Number 3, being shamed for expressing emotions. There's a lot of shaming going on in the chat. Millennials were raised by parents who would believe in showing tough love. True. Rather than encouraging emotional availability, millennial kids learned that being vulnerable made them weak. That's probably true. When really it just made them human, writes this left liberal author probably. Millennials pushed their feelings down to a place they couldn't reach, then wondered why they had such a hard time connecting with other people. Millennials have spent years undoing the damage and learning how to express their emotions, but they still secretly resent that they were raised the idea that being sensitive made them inferior. I'm just going to start this one and then I'll let you guys go. Neither of you have ever had to date a woman.
Facts.
So you don't know what it means. You don't know what it's like to be a man and to have emotion. We are not emotionless creatures.
Correct.
But we learn at a very young age, straight men, that if we externalize our emotions other than rage, we're allowed to externalize rage. We're allowed to externalize anger, but we're not really allowed to externalize many other emotions. Happiness and joy, a little bit. It's okay. But you can't be so happy that it makes you cry, ever. And you can never be sad publicly or cry publicly because being vulnerable makes you weak. And here's the thing. It doesn't make you weak in the sense that you're a weak person for doing it, but your mating and your dating options will be reduced greatly, as a matter of fact, because no woman wants to see their man cry. They just don't. They just don't. And that's a reality that us straight men have to deal with. Gay men and women don't have these problems, the same kinds of problems. They're at least not to the level. Imagine if you couldn't get a date because you were upset. Imagine if an entire gender found you disgusting because of your natural outpourings of emotions. That's kind of the scenario that we find men, and a lot of young men are in, and they find themselves, a lot of them, they self-delete for that reason. So it's a sad state of affairs, and I don't know how to fix it, but I certainly... I can't change the conditioning of how society conditioned a man like myself to suppress my emotions and my feelings other than rage, other than aggression, other than ambition. Those are the only ones that are allowed. All right, I'll open up the floor.
I think in this next generation, we need to stop using the term suck it up. It's like when your kid comes to you with emotions, don't just be like, stop crying. Why are you crying? No, we need to end that. Because that's what made this generation how they are. So many men will come to me in therapy and be like, my parents just told me to suck it up. I don't know how to express my emotions. And so we just need to normalize, like, emotions are part of us. And my parents never shunned my emotions. I mean, I cried so much as a child. I cried every single day up until 5th grade when I went to school. So I was coddled very much.
I resonate with that. I always tell the joke. I tell this joke. I always say, feelings are like treasures, so bury them. But I will say that you're right, because you can be so emotionally shut down, you don't even know what you feel. You can't even, and then you become this. I mean, that's kind of a castration if you think about it. It's kind of an emotional castration, because you cannot know what you feel. Am I angry? Am I depressed? Am I sleepy? Am I tired? Am I hungry? I am so disassociated from my experience of being a human that I can't even tell you what I'm feeling. Now that's frustrating for a partner, because when you can't communicate to your partner what you're feeling, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling cranky, I'm hungry. Your partner doesn't know how to interact with you, because the only thing we know to do with each other is use our words. Your partner isn't your parent. So yeah, I think it's in all things, for me at least, it's a middle path. You don't want to go into like emotional masturbatory, meltdown, but you also don't want to be so shut off that you're just not even really a human, because part of the joy of being a human is having feelings. And, whether those are feelings of happiness or joy or being moved or sadness, those things are proof that you are a human being and you're alive. You're alive. So having feelings is a mark of being alive. So it's how we manage them. And I think the problem is not that we have feelings. It's that we are not taught how to manage them and manifest them in a healthy way in a society. That's the problem.
Next item on the list here of things millennials secretly resent about how they were raised, that they were held to unrealistic beauty standards. As a generation who grew up on the cusp of being chronically online, millennials were raised with extremely unrealistic beauty standards. In the early 2000s, celebrity culture reigned supreme, warping the way millennial girls saw themselves. Millennials resent how much pressure they were under to have perfect bodies when they were basically still kids. I don't know, hasn't that always been the case? I mean, in the 1950s, wasn't it always still the case, that like women wanted to look like Marilyn Monroe and the pinup girls on the sides of the B-52 bombers? I mean, is it more unrealistic now than it ever has been in terms of beauty standards? I don't know. I mean, it certainly seems that way for men. It used to be that you could look like Rock Hudson, and just be kind of strong. Now you got to be like jacked up on roids, and you got to look like Jason Momoa,
That's right. You're right. I mean, it affects both people. It affects men and women, both. And, the amount of dudes who have body dysmorphia is just as bad as the women who have body dysmorphia. Guys have bigorexia. Women have anorexia, and guys have bigorexia.
Bigorexia. That's a new term for me. Define bigorexia.
Well, bigorexia is when a guy looks at himself in the mirror when he's working out, and he sees himself, and he could be very fit. He could be really looking really great. And to the average person who would walk by that guy, they'd be like, dang, he looks really good. But he sees himself as very weak. So he doesn't see himself as very strong. So his whole thing is like, I got to get bigger. I got to get bigger. I got to get larger. I got to get larger. So his whole thing is about, is that. So it's a dysmorphia between what he sees and what's actually happening in reality.
I feel like in terms of, beauty standards between men and women, that it's harder for men because men have to like go to the gym and bulk up, and all women have to do is just not eat. Just it's cheaper.
Just not eat.
Yeah,
right.
It's cheaper. With men, you got to get all these supplements. You got to eat protein.
Men have to eat more. Women have to consume less. Is that what? I'm
Exactly.
hearing?
Men have to consume more. Costs more. It's more. You got to really work. Maybe even take steroids and things like that and drugs.
Yeah.
Like I guess women if you do Ozempic, but I mean still.
So I think, honestly, the beauty standards have gotten worse with this newer generation. So I remember when I was in middle school, I learned about a boob job for the very first time when Britney Spears got one. And so the millennials, boob jobs were the very first plastic surgery we ever really talked about, in addition to like navel rings,
God bless them.
belly button rings. Those were really popular too, right? So you wanted a nice tummy so you could have a belly button ring. And so I didn't know about any other plastic surgery. I don't even know if Botox existed back then. I didn't know about anything other than boob jobs. So to me, I think with our millennial generation, having good sized boobs was very important because a lot of girls, and nose jobs. Yeah, that's right. Nose jobs were very popular in high school. The girls would get nose jobs and boob jobs. And so those were the two body parts that I was most aware of, at least in my generation.
Not a BBL.
Oh, no. Butts did not matter back then. It was just boobs and noses.
God,
Well, the
I love
90s
boobs.
girls were skinny. The 90s girls were skinny. And there is that hilarious, I don't know if y'all have ever seen the movie Clueless with Alicia Silverstone, but she's in that movie, and it's like she's on the field out with all the other classmates, all her other girlfriends, and they're all like, they've all had their plastic surgery and their noses are all bandaged up. And it's like, but you're right, like the plastic surgery is the thing now. It used to just be losing weight, and now it's like, have you altered physically your face through surgery? Yeah.
I'm a big believer in plastic surgery. Not really like facelift kind of stuff. I think that like the Botox stuff looks weird, but I think like a good nose job can really has improved a lot of lives. I know a lot of young women who had like big hook noses and like they look like the Wicked Witch, and they came out and their noses were skinny and beautiful. They didn't, it wasn't like Michael Jackson or anything like that, but they had beautiful noses. And I think there's a really that's great if it improves your confidence. You get if you had like the pancake boobs, right, and then all of a sudden you've got nice big full luscious breasts. I can imagine that it's made a lot of people's lives much better.
Well, I mean, ultimately, if you're doing it for yourself, at the end of the day, that's really the only thing that matters. Like, anytime
Nobody
you do
does
something
it for
for someone
themselves.
else.
Nobody. That's so full of shit.
Well, I just think that
Nobody
it's,
does it
when
for
you do something for somebody else, well, then you're always relying on other people to tell you who you are. It's like, you never know yourself.
I agree.
Tell me who I am. Tell me who I am. Tell me that I'm valued. It's like, if you can't give that to yourself, you're fucked up, man. You're fucked up. You need other people to tell you that you're okay in life, that you're doing okay, that you look okay, that you are okay. If you can't give that to yourself, you'll never be able to. You'll always rely on other people that have to give it to you, and then that makes you a greedy ass, needy motherfucker.
And it's a carrot that you're always going to chase. You're never going to get the carrot from other people because they're never going to be happy with you.
Well, you both would know about that. Let's move on to the next one.
Don't ask me about my carrot.
Don't chase the carrots. Okay, this next one is actually really good, and I think we're going to have a lot to say about that one. The next one, the thing that millennials secretly resent about how they were raised, that they weren't taught how to set boundaries. This is a big one, and this is one that I had to learn early on, and it is, boy, when I started to learn how to set boundaries. And part of it has to do with just knowing how to be confrontational at the right time, and because most people, they don't like conflict, and they don't know that like little provocations will eventually become big provocations, that if you give somebody an inch, they'll take a mile. Millennials secretly resent that they were raised without an essential life lesson, how to set healthy boundaries. According to a brain coach, Nawal Mustafa, brain coach, what the hell is that? Not knowing how to set boundaries is a recipe for feeling resentful. Resentment builds when you set no boundaries. true. And when you let others dictate your choices, leaving you feel powerless and disrespected. Without solid boundaries, you overextend yourself for others and feel underappreciated and used. You take on responsibilities that aren't yours to carry and then feel frustrated. Like, my thing is sometimes I get in trouble for being a little bit overly confrontational, but I almost never get taken advantage of. That's for sure.
You used to. When you were younger.
Yeah.
That's how you learned.
Well, that's how you learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you've had someone take advantage of your good nature,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that you say to yourself, okay, this isn't going to happen again. I'm going to set my boundaries. You'd be surprised at how people's attitudes change toward you. They don't even try to cross your boundaries because they know that they are there and they've seen you set them. And this can apply to so many things. I'm sure you could probably apply this to like your vocal teaching, Justin, to some extent, right? Like the boundaries that you set with clients, with your students.
I just literally did it I do it all the time in regards to my schedule, because as a person who runs a business, I have business hours, right? And people will ask, well, can I come and see you on a Sunday, or can I come and see you at 8:00 in the morning? And I'm like, no. And you can't come and see me at 8:00 in the morning for the same reason that you can't go to Target at 3 in the morning. Like, I'm closed, right? Those are not my business hours. But the thing that you said was so, I think, spot on, is the amount of resentment you have in your life shows how many boundaries that you don't have. Because I feel like when people are really resentful, it's because they haven't communicated a boundary. I am happier. Let me tell you something. And I know you can say this too, Og and Steph, but like, I'm a much happier person when I have boundaries because it makes me feel good about myself. It also makes me feel like I'm respecting myself enough to say, hey, I'm not going to work at 8:00 on, in the morning. Like, I'm just not going to do that. Like, that's not going to be my jam. I'm going to do my best work in the afternoons and the evenings. And those are my business hours. And I love that idea of resentment. And I also think, to your point, Austin, burnout is also indicative of somebody who doesn't have boundaries. When a person is constantly having their boundaries overtaken all the time, that gets really tiring. And you just burn out because you're just tired of people just using you as a doormat.
Yeah, I was raised in a household where I didn't even know what boundaries were. I mean, boundaries did not exist in my house. I'm the queen of giving. So I give to a fault. And so finally, when I was in college, right at the end of college, I went to therapy and I finally learned how to assertively communicate and set boundaries. And it was very tough at first because people do not respond well to you when you first set boundaries with them because they get used to you being so easygoing and complacent. And so at first they're like, and they give you pushback, but then eventually they start respecting you. It'll get better. It's just scary at first.
I call that changing the dance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you have a particular kind of behavior with people and then all of a sudden you change your behavior, I call that changing the dance. You're changing the rules of the dance, and the person has to now learn how to dance with you in a different way. And they might resent that at the beginning, but it's so important. And, I think one of the best skills that anybody can get is boundaries, because unfortunately, this is another thing where I see a lot of women in the voice teaching space who have no boundaries, and they are constantly complaining about, being walked over and all, being manipulated and taken advantage of. But I'm like, you have to set and learn how to set boundaries. It has to be, here's the thing I'll say for Dad. This is really good, I think, about Dad, that Dad did. Dad would always let us have our time in our rooms. Like Dad would have us have times where we would all have to be hanging out as a family. But then if our doors were closed upstairs, or we were doing something, our doors were closed, we were listening to music or reading books, we got to have our time. We got to have our time away. Dad let us, and Mom let us have our time by ourselves, which I thought was really, in hindsight, really respectful, of honoring other, your kid's boundaries. Like, if your kid wants to be alone for a while, let your kid be alone for a while,
I wasn't allowed.
But yeah.
I had to keep my door open at all times.
Really?
Even until I moved out, of my house. So the door always had to be open.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well, boundaries. Mm-hmm. Millennials were raised to believe in the American dream, only to find out that their version of adulthood looks drastically different than what they were promised. They don't have the same level of financial security their boomer parents had, and they're bitter that they weren't prepared for extended economic instability. They have way more money worries than they ever thought they would. Millennials can't afford to own a home, and many of them still live paycheck to paycheck. According to a survey from the American Psychological Association, 63% of people between 35 and 44 years old feel consumed by financial anxiety, as opposed to older generations. The millennial midlife crisis is way more about making ends meet than anything else, and they resent how unprepared they feel for their extended economic woes. It certainly has been a roller coaster ride ever since I graduated from college, I have to say. I mean, I did choose a profession that has a tendency more towards instability, and I do accept that. But I'm not the only person my age who has this kind of instability. The types of jobs that existed back in the day for our boomer parents, they just don't exist anymore. I mean, the only way to escape poverty now is to start a small business in some ways, to find yourself, in a position where you're providing some kind of necessity to a community. Otherwise, most people, Justin, they really are living paycheck to paycheck. It's been harder. It gets harder and harder to make a living as generations go by. It's supposed to be the opposite. And I really feel like it does contribute to the generational divide, because a lot of boomers, not necessarily, our parents or anything, but a lot of boomers don't sort of sympathize. They just say, sort of lift yourself up by the bootstraps, but it's not the same economic environment. You used to be able to buy a home with 3x your salary. Now you have to buy, it's like 6 or 7x your salary to buy a home.
And college was $5,000.
Yeah.
The cost of education was not as much as it is today. You're right. I mean, there's a mismatch. It's like, well, I grew up with this, and this is what I did, and it's not the same. That is the generational divide. But I do, come back to this idea about academia. It's like, even with music degrees, like I'm going to be rather editorial here, but like, having a voice performance degree, I think in hindsight, I think is probably a mistake. You should have music education degrees or music degrees, and let people, get music degrees that way. But like performance degrees, to me, are overrated. There's also a big conversation going on right now about the BFA programs, the Bachelor of Fine Arts programs, because the actual number of college musical theater Bachelor of Fine Arts programs have exploded in the past 10 or 15 years, because they're a cash cow. So that to me is a kind of an exploitation. You're exploiting kids' dreams to go to school for being musical theater stars, and many of them are just not that talented or not that good. And it creates this environment then when they get out, that they become very resentful of their education. It's like, well, why was I given a degree in this if I can't get a job doing it? And I think when you have, that kind of bloat in those programs, which are money conscious, right? It's all about them making money, the colleges making money. You get a toxic environment, man, where kids come out and they're like, well, why can't I be successful? Why can't I, it's because now not only have you gotten a degree that's been so globally exploded, you're now competing with all of these other kids across the country who have the same degree as you, even more so than when they did 20 years ago or 30 years ago. The market hasn't tracked for those numbers in musical theater, right? It's not like, oh, we have more musical theater performances today than ever. We haven't. Post-COVID, theaters are shutting left and right, So more and more people are now competing for fewer and fewer jobs. So I think the academic thing of setting people up for those kind of careers is really dangerous. You should have theater degrees where people can teach, or they can have some other way to make money in their chosen field. But, performance degrees, I personally think performance degrees are not a great idea. That's my opinion.
Interesting.
Yeah, my parents, they set me up a good foundation for financial success. So after high school, I went to college, and I specifically, picked a career that I thought I could make a decent living in. Social work is definitely, you're not going to be very rich, but I mean, I was really, really comfortable. I was able to save quite a bit. I think this newer generation now, they struggle way more with money because, like you said, they're getting these degrees that they can't even get a job in. But I'd say most of the people I went to college with back in the day, they all have jobs. I don't know anybody who's struggling to find a job that at least was in my circle.
Well, it's because of so many problems that we have with mental health in this society. There's going to be lots of work for social workers and therapists for sure. Yeah. Justin, we got to wrap things up here. Is there anything else that you want to share with our audience? Yeah, it's the end. I know, it's sad.
Well, I have a little article coming out on my Substack, justinpeterson.substack.com, coming out here at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 o'clock Central. It's all about some new studies that they have figured out that you can listen to birdsong as a way to decrease your anxiety. So one of the ways you can lessen your stage fright is to sit back in your dressing room and put your headphones on and listen to some birds.
Okay.
That's coming out at
I believe that. I think that's probably effective.
Justin, what's your Substack and where can people subscribe to it?
Justin Peterson, all E's, Petercn.substack.com. I talk a lot about, singing, music, culture, things like that. But it's it's pretty low politics because I have mostly a very liberal audience because it's in the arts. So I try to be as good as I can to walk a middle path.
There we go.
Not try to piss
It's
people
nice
off. 'Cause
to
you know
do
what?
that
Even
sometimes. And to not
well,
offend
even
people
liberals
so
have
much.
money.
Justin,
Even
we love you,
liberals have
brother.
money.
Thank you so much for
Love you
joining
too.
us, being so generous with your time. Hopefully we'll get to see you next week.
All right, talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we go, JP.
Democrats just spent millions trying to reverse engineer a guy with a mic, a beard, and a can of liquid death. And somehow they're still losing. Because here's the thing, you can't fake Joe Rogan, you can't buy Cool, and you definitely can't slap together a party-approved podcast factory and expect people to listen just because it's aligned. This isn't a Joe Rogan problem. This is a reality problem, a credibility problem, a we forgot how to talk to normal people problem. So what's the solution according to the party of consultants and coastal media execs? Easy. Just throw millions of dollars at it. Build a think tank. Fund a progressive content network. Hire some guy named Tristan to run your TikTok strategy. Problem solved. Except it's not. Because people can smell fake from a mile away. They know when the vibe is curated. They know when the words are pre-approved by a messaging team. They know when a relatable podcast host is actually just reading from a DC script with a friendlier tone and slightly more slang. That's what makes Rogan such a problem for them. He's not trying. He's not focused grouped. He's not polished. He just is, and people love him for it. He'll have on RFK Jr., Tulsi, Bernie, Elon, Jordan Peterson, whoever, and just talk. No interruptions. No MSNBC panel dissecting it in real time. No handlers. Just long-form conversations where people say real things and sometimes mess up. And that makes the consultants sweat through their Patagonia vests. Because for them, content isn't about conversation. It's about control. It's about protecting the narrative, defining the Overton window, making sure no one strays too far from the party line. But you can't compete with freedom of thought by throwing money at the problem. You can't manufacture real trust through a marketing campaign. What do they try instead? Hire digital strategists to pump out progressive talking points. Recruit creators to slip ideology into their skincare routines. Build out newsrooms and podcast studios and fund them with foundation money, all in the name of democratizing information. But really, it's about centralizing influence. They're not trying to empower creators. They're trying to clone them. Replace the messy, unpredictable voices with controlled, polished alternatives who never challenge power unless it's the approved kind. Meanwhile, guys like Rogan and creators like you and me and thousands of others across the liberty space, we don't need $10 million to speak freely. We don't need a memo to know what's true. We built audiences the old-fashioned way, by telling the truth, taking the hits, and showing up consistently. That's why they're failing. Because you can't mass-produce authenticity. You can't run liberty through a communications funnel. You can't build trust by reading a teleprompter with feelings. The irony? They had cultural dominance for decades. Hollywood, music, universities, mainstream news. They had it all. And now, a UFC commentator with a microphone is pulling more viewers than CNN in prime time. And it's driving them nuts. So what do? Blame misinformation, blame podcast algorithms, blame toxic masculinity, blame anyone and anything but their own inability to listen, to debate, to connect. Here's the truth. The real revolution didn't come from a movement, it came from a conversation. And people aren't giving that up just because the White House wants better influencers. So if you're tired of content that sounds like it was written by AI after being yelled at by a DEI coordinator, if you're tired of party-approved personalities reading from the script and calling it authenticity, then do something about it. Support the creators who aren't for sale. And you can do that right now by going to forlibertyshop.com. We're not backed by a foundation. We're not built by a comms team. We don't need a permission slip to say what we believe. What we are is proudly independent, loud, free, and just rebellious enough to put it on a t-shirt. So if you want to support liberty style and actual unscripted thinking, not the Spotify-friendly version of it, then grab your gear at forlibertyshop.com. From government mocking t-shirts to Gulf of America towels, we have the best merch for freedom-loving patriots. That's forlibertyshop.com. Because freedom doesn't come from a grant proposal. And influence, that has to be earned. See you next time.